Ethan confessed to me during one of his business trips that his secretary was unexpectedly pregnant. This was our 5th year of marriage, and he had always wanted a child. With tears streaming down his face, he begged me, "Olivia, the baby is already 7 months along. Please let her give birth. I'm willing to leave with nothing." I nodded. Fine, let her have the baby. After all, this betrayal was something Ethan brought upon himself. Ethan and I had been married for 5 years without having a child. At first, I thought having children wasn't something you could force. Keeping a calm mindset would naturally lead to success over time. And he had originally shared my perspective. He would even console me during my moments of false hope. "Liv, there's no need to rush. Good things take time. Our little one is probably waiting for the perfect moment to arrive and surprise us." In those moments, I felt grateful that someone who loved children as much as he did could be so understanding toward me. But over the past 2 years, under the growing pressure from William and Grace, Ethan's parents, he began to complain more and more about the childless situation. One time, Ethan even went as far as scheduling an appointment for me with a renowned gynecologist in New York without consulting me. He wanted me to get checked to see if there were any fertility issues on my end. When he brought up the suggestion, I was taken aback. My frustration boiled over, and I lost my temper for the first time in our marriage over this issue. "Ethan, shouldn't you be the one to get checked first? It's much easier for men to undergo testing than it is for women. Once you've confirmed there's no problem on your end, I'll go for a checkup. That's the most reasonable approach, and it minimizes emotional damage for both of us." As soon as I finished speaking, Ethan reacted as if I had insulted him. He jumped to his feet, his expression urgent and defensive. How could there possibly be a problem with me? "Liv, it's been 5 years, don't you think you should consider this for the sake of our family? You only need to get checked, and if there's really an issue, we can explore other ways to conceive. Don't you want to have a child that's the symbol of our love?" For a moment, his accusations left me stunned. I stared at him, dumbfounded and disbelieving. From accusations to emotional manipulation, he was desperately trying to exonerate himself. It was as if, for the past 5 years, he had been the only one making an effort for the sake of having children, while I was the selfish and inconsiderate one neglecting our family's future. In that moment, the man I had shared my life with for years felt like a stranger. The Ethan I remembered gentle, mature, and rational seemed to be nothing more than a facade. The mask had fallen, revealing someone bitter and unpleasant. In the end, I refused Ethan's request. After calming down, I spoke to him with an even tone. "If you get tested, I'll do the same. I can't accept being the sole target of suspicion." Hearing this, Ethan shrugged helplessly. The corners of his mouth drooped, and his gaze turned icy. After that argument, Ethan started traveling for work more frequently. The days he spent at home grew fewer and fewer. Even during the rare times we were together, his mind seemed elsewhere. He brushed off my attempts to share interesting stories or observations, and when I asked about his work troubles, he would dismiss me with a vague smile, unwilling to elaborate. We became little more than acquaintances tied together by the bonds of marriage, unable to even maintain the courtesy of polite companionship. At the time, I thought he was just busy with work, and that neglecting family was an unavoidable side effect of his career ambitions. But then it happened. One day, when Ethan returned from a trip, I noticed something glaringly absent on his hand. His wedding ring was gone. The same ring he hadn't taken off once in our 5 years of marriage. This was the ring I had designed myself. From the initial sketches to the final blueprint, I pored over the design for more than 30 sleepless nights. Though I was well known in my field, designing my own wedding ring made me feel like an inexperienced novice. I approached every step with the utmost caution. At the time, Ethan was by my side day and night. Though he didn't understand a thing about jewelry design, he listened attentively as I explained every intricate detail and the special meanings behind them. There was no way he didn't understand the effort we invested into this ring or the hopes it symbolized for our marriage. Suppressing the disappointment and anger rising within me, I casually asked him, "Where's your wedding ring?" Ethan glanced at his bare finger, then responded after a brief pause, "Oh, I took it off at the pool last time and forgot to put it back on." I stared at his calm expression in silence, the sadness and disillusionment in my heart growing stronger. I could no longer convince myself this was just a natural lull in our marriage or that he had simply forgotten. Ethan had always been meticulous about details. If he began neglecting them, it could only mean he was disregarding the people and things tied to those details. And in marriage, how could a wedding ring be seen as merely a detail? I decided to find an opportunity to have a serious conversation with him. I wanted to understand what had gone wrong in our relationship, what had led him to treat our marriage so carelessly. But before I could prepare for that conversation, that fateful night arrived. The night I planned to share my joy with Ethan that a ring I designed had become our company's top-selling product of the quarter, he confessed, before I could say anything. His secretary, Sophia, was pregnant with his child, already 7 months along. As I counted the days, I realized it had happened shortly after our argument about having children. It was during the time when Ethan began to drift away from our marriage. Everything had a pattern. Liv, I'm sorry. I was really drunk that night and lost control. I promise it was just that one time. After that, I never traveled alone with her again. As I listened, my arm began to tremble. The glass in my hand eventually slipped and shattered on the floor. At that moment, my breathing grew labored, my throat felt like it was being strangled, and I couldn't summon any strength. 7 months, what does that even mean? The due date is only 2 or 3 months away. Sophia, as one of Ethan's employees, couldn't have kept this a secret for long, which means this child was allowed to remain with Ethan's consent until now. Liv, Sophia went to the clinic last month for an abortion. She and I both wanted to correct this mistake, but it didn't work, and Sophia's health has been fragile ever since. Ethan's words sounded sincere, even pleading. He seemed genuinely eager for my forgiveness. But in his eyes, did he truly think I could toss aside my dignity and accept him and someone else's child within our marriage? A failed abortion. What a pathetic lie to concoct. Ethan's words were merely an attempt to show that he had tried to remedy his infidelity. But this child somehow persisted and remained until now. There was nothing more he could do. Flooded with information, my emotions began to stir, yet I managed to maintain my composure. So, Ethan, what do you plan to do now? Ethan mistook my calm reaction as understanding of his behavior. After thinking for a moment, he took my hand excitedly and responded, "Once the baby is born, we can raise it as our own. Then I'll give her some money and ask her to leave Los Angeles for good. That way, you won't have to suffer anymore. How does that sound?" Hearing this, I slowly dug my nails into the flesh of my palm, barely holding back a bitter laugh. But under restraint, my eyes reddened. "So you knew Ethan. You knew I'd been anxious for years about not being able to conceive. You knew how much I suffered trying to get pregnant. So when you accused me of being selfish about having children, it was nothing but a baseless argument to cover your ugly intentions. How laughable. Ethan, how did you become this person step by step? Or maybe I've never truly seen through you." Ethan and I had been together for 8 years, falling in love during college. He was the president of the student council, and I was the head of the etiquette committee. When we first met, he was shy. When we were passionately in love, he was devoted. He never failed as a partner, always treating me like a treasure for 8 years straight. Everyone around me envied my relationship with him. Even my father, William, a notoriously difficult man, thought highly of him. They used to say we were a match made in heaven. A perfect couple, the epitome of love. I once wholeheartedly believed that if 2 people were destined to be together, then the one I, Olivia, was destined for must be Ethan. And yet, as he stood before me now, he asked me to accept the child he conceived during his wanderings. He even had the audacity to claim this was to spare me from suffering. "Ethan, when you wear a mask for too long, taking it off will tear your skin. Look at your distorted face now. It's revolting." Naturally, I couldn't agree to Ethan's request. He must have made promises to Sophia to persuade her to keep the baby. These promises likely included something like, "Once the baby is born, I'll divorce my wife." So his suggestion to raise the child together was just a ploy to stabilize me, to keep me from resenting Sophia during her pregnancy, and to avoid any threats to her. Ethan, you've truly calculated every step for the sake of this child. Even now, you try to use coincidences, drunken mistakes, accidental pregnancies, failed abortions to preserve your image. Truly meticulous work. I didn't respond directly to Ethan's proposal. I simply wiped the tears from the corners of my eyes and spoke to him gently with a calm demeanor. Make sure to compensate Sophia properly afterward. Seeing my apparent kindness and generosity, Ethan finally smiled. He approached slowly and wrapped me in his arms. Olivia, don't overthink it. This will be our child. Thank you for supporting my decision. In his embrace, my gaze darkened. After that day, I secretly arranged for a full medical checkup. A week later, the results came back. All my indicators were perfectly normal. There was no sign of infertility or difficulty conceiving. Holding the report in my hand, I finally felt the weight lift from my chest. So, it's basically confirmed. The child Sophia is carrying is very likely not Ethan's. The outcome we couldn't achieve in 5 years, they managed in one try. What are they, the opposing poles of a magnet finally drawn together? Looking back, I remember when I asked Ethan to get tested first. His unusual reaction, and the way he was so adamant that nothing could possibly be wrong with him, it was suspicious, almost as if he had something to hide. Ethan, if you want a child so badly, so much so that you're willing to betray our marriage and abandon your morals, then fine, I'll make sure you get what you want. When Sophia came to find me, I was sitting in a cozy cafe downstairs from my apartment, sorting through documents for a post-nuptial financial agreement. It had been a few days since Ethan confessed to everything, and we'd had a conversation about it. I told him that while I was willing to consider his proposals, I was struggling to move past his infidelity. It was a betrayal I couldn't easily forgive. Seeing my vulnerable and subdued demeanor, Ethan was overwhelmed with guilt. His eyes reddened as he pleaded, "Liv, it was entirely my fault. If you can find it in your heart to forgive me, I'll do whatever it takes to make it up to you." I told him that I felt deeply insecure and uncertain in our relationship, but because I still loved him, I was willing to give him another chance. Hearing this, Ethan swore up and down that he would never betray me again. I nodded and, as if the thought had just occurred to me, I suggested, "Ethan, if you really want to ease my mind and help me feel more secure, would you consider transferring our jointly owned assets to my name?" His face froze for a moment, clearly reluctant, but I gave him no time to reflect, pressing on, "Ethan, I truly want us to move forward together. I'm only suggesting this so I can feel reassured. If I didn't want to stay with you, I could have simply filed for divorce. After 8 years together, I can't bring myself to let go. I promise to treat this child as my own and give you another chance." As my voice cracked with emotion, tears slipped down my face, and I choked out these heartfelt words. Ethan, hesitating only briefly, finally relented. He had no reason to doubt me, his quiet and dutiful wife of 8 years. He believed I wouldn't dare pull anything drastic and was confident he could keep everything under control. "Ethan, you arrogant fool." Within a week, he transferred all the property we'd acquired during our marriage into my name and had the financial agreements notarized. His guilt, combined with his desire to keep me docile, led him to this decision. After all, Sophia hadn't yet given birth. If I realized too soon that I was being cast aside, they feared I might act out irrationally. When Sophia arrived at the cafe that day, I deliberately took my time gathering my documents, leaving them conspicuously on the table. She sat across from me, ready to speak, but her gaze caught on the financial agreements. Her expression darkened as she asked, "Ethan transferred all the property to you." I smiled at her, calm and composed, and replied, "It's just a little compensation from him. Why are you here?" Sophia fell silent, her heavily adorned right hand absent-mindedly stroking her rounded belly. Her eyes flicked toward me, as if trying to gauge my reaction. But seeing my unruffled demeanor, she seemed a bit disappointed, lowering her gaze. "Sister, I came here today to apologize to you," she said softly. "I'm 7 months pregnant with Ethan's child." Her tone was meek, but the deliberate caress of her belly was nothing short of provocative. I gave a small nod, picked up my coffee, and replied evenly, "He's already told me. Since you're 7 months along, focus on your pregnancy. If it's truly a child of the Cooper family, I'm sure William and Grace will be thrilled." I deliberately emphasized Cooper family, then glanced up to observe her reaction. There was a fleeting flicker of panic in her eyes, her grip on her cup tightened, but she quickly regained her composure. "Oh, sister, what are you saying? Of course, this is Ethan's child." I set my coffee down, nodding again. Her tone was firm, her expression calm, but I could see the cracks beneath her facade. Sophia likely never imagined that after all this time sneaking around with Ethan, the child she was carrying might not even be his. How unfortunate for her. Not long after meeting Sophia, I received an update from Emmy, a friend I had asked to gather some information for me. Emmy works at the headquarters of Oceanic Corporation, while Ethan is the CEO of one of its subsidiaries, Ocean View Enterprises. Although they're in different branches, Emmy found it relatively easy to dig up some gossip. She told me that after some inquiries in Ocean View's administrative department, she discovered that 8 months ago, Sophia had a boyfriend who would often pick her up from work to drive her home. No one really knew why they broke up in the end. Shortly after the breakup, Sophia resigned from her job citing personal reasons. Rumors spread that her resignation was because she was pregnant, and everyone assumed it was her ex-boyfriend's child. Emma, looking somewhat puzzled, asked me, "Liv, why are you digging into this?" Her expression carried a hint of concern, but knowing how sharp she was, I assumed she had already guessed why I, as Ethan's wife, would suddenly start investigating his pregnant ex-secretary. Seeing the heavy look on my face, Emma sighed and said, "Liv, if there's anything you need help with, you have to let me know. I'll do everything in my power to assist you." Her resolute promise brought me back to my senses. After experiencing such betrayal, I had become somewhat disillusioned with human connection. Yet this show of loyalty still moved me. "Thank you. Emmy, I am indeed dealing with some challenges right now and could really use your help." Emma placed her hand gently over mine and said softly, "What do you need help with? I'll do my best." Looking down at the wedding ring on my finger, my gaze darkened. "Can you help me look into Sophia's ex-boyfriend's background?" Hearing this, Emma didn't hesitate to agree. For someone as socially savvy as her, finding someone in our city's social circles wasn't difficult at all. That morning, after finishing the new quarter's product development meeting, I felt unwell and decided to take the rest of the day off. When I stepped out of the elevator and approached the door of our apartment, I unexpectedly heard a heated argument coming from inside. I paused, my hand hovering over the keypad of the digital lock. "Did you really transfer all the properties into Olivia's name? What will I have left if I marry you after this?" Sophia's hysterical shouting reached my ears, while Ethan remained silent. Hearing this, I couldn't help but curl my lips into a slight smirk. It seemed the information I had deliberately let slip to Sophia had worked. She was indeed upset about the whole property arrangement. "Sophia, those are just a few houses. I have other assets, don't I? Or, were you with me just for the money?" The sound of a ceramic bowl shattering rang out before Ethan could finish his sentence. Sophia let out a mocking laugh as if she had just heard the biggest joke. "What else, Ethan? I carried your child for 10 months, and I get nothing, while that woman gets over a dozen properties without lifting a finger. Do you think I'm a fool?" I raised my hand to cover my mouth, suppressing a laugh. For someone I thought was a seasoned player, Sophia was showing an astonishing lack of composure. She still had bargaining power in this situation, but her tantrum was essentially throwing it all away. The argument inside continued to escalate. Sophia's cries grew louder and more desperate. "I'll go terminate this pregnancy right now. I'll make sure you're left with no heirs." Hearing this, I arched an eyebrow in surprise. That was a surefire way to hit Ethan's most sensitive nerve. Ethan valued his offspring far more than he ever let on. Sure enough, the sound of a heavy slap reverberated through the apartment, followed by the noise of furniture being shoved. The sound of a bookshelf being pushed over rang out, and then silence. Sophia stopped crying. "Enough, Sophia. If you dare terminate this child, I'll make sure your entire family pays for it," Ethan said coldly, his voice oozing menace. I could almost picture his once gentle face, now dark and foreboding. Sophia didn't dare utter another word. She knew Ethan had the power to back up his threats. After that day, Ethan's attitude toward me shifted subtly. He started coming home on time and refrained from attending unnecessary business trips. He even began picking out gifts for me on special occasions. I played along, feigning understanding, but deep down, I knew the real reason behind his change. Ethan had initially planned to divorce me after Sophia gave birth so he could marry his young and beautiful mistress. But with Sophia's recent erratic behavior, juxtaposed against my obedient and understanding demeanor, Ethan had clearly reconsidered. Now, his plan seemed to be to wait for the child to be born, then pay Sophia off to disappear. But that wasn't enough for me. While this ending was advantageous to me, it wasn't the outcome I desired. As Sophia's due date approached, I began encouraging Ethan to visit her more often. Of course, my intention wasn't out of acceptance for the child. I simply wanted Ethan to invest more of his hopes and efforts into this child, so the eventual disappointment would hit him harder. To my surprise, Ethan showed reluctance to visit Sophia. It seemed his frustration with her had reached a point where he couldn't even be bothered to check on her as her delivery date loomed. "Honey, Sophia's child is our child too. If I were to visit her, Sophia might not like it. Things between us are already awkward enough. In this situation, you're the only one who can step in. You should spend more time looking after them. It's a chance to bond early." Hearing my suggestion, Ethan's frown finally eased. He agreed softly, pulling me into his arms and resting his chin affectionately against my forehead. "All these years, you still managed to be so understanding. If only we could have a child of our own. Would that not be wonderful?" His voice was filled with regret, as though it came straight from his heart. But hearing this, my face, nestled against his shoulder, slowly darkened. "Ethan, I should thank fate for giving me a chance to see you for who you truly are. Having a child with someone like you would be the greatest regret of my life." At 39 weeks, Sophia gave birth to a healthy baby boy. Inside the hospital room, the joyful chatter of William and Grace drowned out the baby's cries, spilling out into the hallway. I leaned against the wall outside, my expression calm. I should have realized long ago that William and Grace must have known about the baby's existence from the very start. Perhaps they had even been complicit with Ethan and Sophia all along. But my mind wandered, unbidden, to years ago, our wedding day. I had knelt before William and Grace, offering them tea as I called them Mom and Dad for the first time. Grace's eyes welled with tears, her voice choked with emotion. Friends around me whispered enviously, "This is the first time I've ever seen a mother-in-law cry with joy at being called Mom." After the wedding, Grace often took me to high society events in New York. She would always beam with pride, introducing me to others. "This is our Liv, so kind and thoughtful, and the lead designer at Starlight Jewelry." Marrying Liv was the best thing that ever happened to Ethan. Back then, everyone including me thought I had the perfect marriage. A talented and devoted husband, warm and loving in-laws. But comparing those memories to now, it's nothing short of ironic. Snapping back to the present, I knocked on the door and stepped inside, placing the pot of soup I had made on the table. Just as I was about to turn and leave, Sophia called out to stop me. She turned to William and Grace, feigning innocence and sweetness. "Mom, Dad, could you step out for a moment? I'd like to have a private word with Liv." William and Grace exchanged hesitant glances. After a brief silence, they nodded in agreement, though their expressions betrayed unease and worry. I understood they were afraid something might happen if Sophia and I were left alone in the room together. The thought left a bitter taste in my mouth. The fickleness of human relationships is truly a hard lesson to learn. Once the door closed, Sophia's previously gentle gaze turned sharp as a blade. "You've lost, Liv. Mom and Dad just told me they're ready for Ethan to file for divorce. You didn't really think Ethan would take the baby away and raise it with you, did you? That was just a lie to placate you. Now that the baby's here, you're no longer of any use. You should savor the last few days you have left as Mrs. Carter." Sophia's tone carried the smugness of a victor delivering a final blow to a fallen opponent. But her provocation barely stirred any emotion in me. Calmly, I began ladling out the soup. The insulated container had done its job well, steam still rose from the surface. I looked up at Sophia. Her face was pale, her complexion sallow, and her features haggard. Childbirth had aged her visibly, making her appear at least 3 years older than me, despite being 3 years younger. I said nothing to retaliate. Instead, my gaze shifted to the baby in her arms. The baby's skin was a dull, yellowish tone far from the fair complexions of both Ethan and Sophia before her pregnancy. If the child grew any darker, one might mistake him for being of African descent. Raising an eyebrow, I couldn't resist a subtle jab. "Really, Sophia? I hope you're not talking big." Wait until you've officially entered the Carter family before you start boasting to me. Otherwise, everything you're doing now is just paving the way for someone else." My words struck a nerve. Sophia's eyes filled with venomous hatred, her face contorted with malice. A chill ran down my spine as a bad feeling settled over me. Sure enough, Sophia suddenly pinched the baby's arm hard. A red welt immediately appeared on the tender skin, and the baby's cries filled the room. William and Grace rushed in, their faces full of panic. Before I could even form a response, Sophia had already begun her performance. "Mom, Dad, please, you have to stand up for me and the baby." Liv said she wanted to see the baby, but the moment I looked away, she pinched his arm. "Just look at how swollen it is." William and Grace turned to me with accusing eyes, pushing past me to inspect the baby. When they saw the mark on his arm, Grace's expression hardened as she turned to me. The love and warmth that had once filled her gaze were gone, replaced by coldness and disdain. I shook my head slightly, silently denying the accusation. But I knew they wouldn't believe me. To them, it was easier to trust a mother's instinct to protect her child than to believe the innocence of a daughter-in-law they had known for years. As the baby's crying subsided, Grace walked toward me. She didn't raise her voice, but her words cut deeper than any shout ever could. After a brief moment of calm, Grace spoke with a heavy tone. "Liv, you've seen how these years have passed without you being able to have a child. Although we truly like you as our daughter-in-law, it's inevitable that there's been some pressure. Now that Sophia has given birth to Ethan's son, we're thinking to offer you some financial compensation, so even after you and Ethan get divorced, we'll still consider you part of the family." As I heard this, the initial nervousness I felt finally dissipated. I couldn't help but chuckle softly. Her grandson had just been born, and she wasted no time in bringing this matter up directly. How hypocritical and cold this family is. Faced with Grace's so-called comforting words, I chose not to respond. Instead, I picked up the bowl of soup I had just poured. I drank it in one gulp. "Mom, this fish soup is the recipe you taught me 4 years ago. I've always respected and loved you. But this time, this will be the last time I call you Mom. Family, that's unnecessary. Goodbye." 1 week later, Ethan came to me with the divorce papers. It was sooner than I had anticipated. After all, my visit to Sophia's hospital room last week was intentional. I wanted to provoke her into pressuring Ethan to divorce me sooner. Because I needed Ethan to feel the greatest sense of guilt towards me at the moment of our divorce. That way, I could secure the maximum financial compensation. Otherwise, given Ethan's current frustrated and resigned attitude towards Sophia, I was genuinely worried he might actually opt to keep the child and abandon me. Fortunately, Sophia, William, and Grace did not disappoint me. I raised my eyes to look at Ethan, maintaining the same smile I always wore. But he looked haggard, his mental state clearly in disarray. The dark circles under his eyes were visible beneath the black-framed glasses, and his hair was unkempt, falling messily over his forehead. Ethan clutched the divorce papers in his hand, his gaze shifting repeatedly between the document and me. His expression was conflicted and pained. After a long silence, he finally spoke. "Liv, I'm sorry. I swear to God, I never wanted to divorce you. But I'm truly out of options. Sophia is using the baby to threaten me. My parents are siding with her, constantly pressuring me to divorce you. So I had no choice." He slowly pushed the divorce papers toward me. I lowered my gaze to the section about asset division. Since our prenuptial agreement had already been notarized, all the fixed assets acquired during our marriage were under my name. This was undisputed. The total included 15 properties across various locations and 7 cars. As for Ethan's savings and company shares, the agreement stated an 80-20 split, 80 to me, 20 to him. This genuinely surprised me. I had consulted divorce attorneys before. Typically, the party at fault in a marriage receives a smaller portion of the assets, but the reduction is usually around 10, at most 20. Originally, I had planned that if Ethan's offer gave me less than 70, I would contact my attorney to fight for a larger share. But with this split, it saved me quite a bit of trouble. Just as I picked up the pen to sign my name, Ethan suddenly grabbed my hand. His eyes brimmed with tears, his voice choked as he spoke. "Liv, you've endured so much during this time. I had thought everything would go smoothly as I planned. but Sophia has been constantly threatening me these past few days. She said if we didn't get divorced, she'd jump off a building with the baby. I truly had no other choice. You don't need to worry about the asset compensation. I'll transfer it to your name immediately. And in the future, if you don't have children, you can treat the baby as your own. I coldly withdrew my hand from his grasp. An overwhelming sense of disgust surged within me, and I had no desire to stay any longer or to continue this charade. No need, Mr. Harper. Take care from now on. With those words, I picked up the signed agreement and left. What Ethan didn't know was that, if I ever decide to have children in the future, they would be mine and mine alone. As for him, well, that's likely no longer an option for him. Over the following 2 weeks, I sold off the shares of Harper Enterprises that Ethan had allocated to me at a high price. This deal brought in quite a substantial amount of money. As I looked at the balance in my account, I couldn't help but smile. Lucas reached out to me. Lucas, Sophia's ex-boyfriend. In fact, the week Sophia gave birth, Emmy had already found Lucas. But at that time, I didn't meet him immediately. Instead, I told Emmy that I'd meet with Lucas after my divorce was finalized. Now that the Harper Enterprises shares had been sold, the timing was perfect. When I met Lucas, I didn't beat around the bush. However, I couldn't help but notice Lucas's complexion. Indeed, it was quite dark. His rugged and unpolished appearance suggested he might be from a more remote or rural area. This was unexpected. I sat across from Lucas, pulling out a photo from my bag, a picture of Sophia holding the baby, surrounded by Ethan's family. Lucas recognized Sophia, but showed little reaction. He simply said flatly, "We've already broken up. This has nothing to do with me anymore." I sighed, somewhat exasperated, wanting to roll my eyes, but I held back and tried to guide him patiently. Based on the timeline, Sophia got pregnant last August. Back then, were you sure you had already broken up? Or to put it bluntly, are you certain you didn't have any intimate relations during that period? Hearing this, Lucas's brow furrowed deeply. He seemed to be recalling something, and then it dawned on him. "Are you saying, this child might be mine?" I nodded. Upon receiving my confirmation, he froze in his seat, incapable of processing the revelation for a long while. He simply held the photo, staring at it over and over again. Suddenly, as if a thought had struck him, he pulled out his phone, swiping through it several times before handing it to me. I glanced down. The screen was filled with hotel reservations. Nearly all of them were from last summer, July through September. The dates coincided perfectly with Ethan and Sophia's business trips back to New York. Sophia was certainly busy, traveling for work with Ethan, only to return and meet Lucas. I took screenshots of every reservation page and saved the images. Then I proposed a deal to Lucas. "I can tell you the truth, but you must promise not to reveal my involvement afterward." Lucas nodded. "Yes, this boy is undeniably yours. The man in the photo was my husband, but he's infertile. It's impossible for him to have impregnated Sophia." Truthfully, I wasn't completely certain, but I was deliberate in my assertion to fuel Lucas's rage for my benefit. Barely had the words left my mouth when Bam Lucas slammed his fist on the table with such force it echoed across the room. Gone was his usual mild-mannered demeanor. A ferocious expression overtook him. "Where are they?" His voice was tinged with barely contained fury. Rural and remote areas often hold the idea of lineage and carrying on the family name in high regard. Seeing Lucas's rage-filled expression and noting his reaction to the word boy confirmed this sentiment. I provided him with the address of the maternity care center where Sophia was staying and the location of Ethan's office. Clutching the addresses, Lucas was visibly on the brink of losing control. But before storming off, he still managed to thank me. After all, if not for my revelation, he might have never known he had a biological son whom Sophia had used as a bargaining chip for wealth. The next time I heard news about Sophia, and Ethan was via local trending headlines. The tags read, "Man causes scene at NYC Maternity Center, CEO Ethan of Horizon Inc., and former secretaries, baby not his biological child. CEO Ethan caught in pre-wedding affair." Clicking into the story revealed videos of Lucas standing outside Horizon Inc.'s headquarters and the maternity center holding a banner. The banner read, CEO Ethan and my ex-girlfriend Sophia, return my son, I couldn't help but laugh out loud at the sight. Scrolling through the thousands of comments below, I saw the most common suggestion. Just do a paternity test. Everything else is irrelevant. Honestly, though, that kid's complexion is so dark compared to the CEO's. You don't even need a test to figure it out, it's probably the ex-boyfriend's child. Along with calls for a paternity test, others chimed in. Ethan divorced his ex-wife in July, but the baby was already born by then. Infidelity is undeniable. Doesn't the CEO look familiar? I swear I've seen him at the urology clinic before. At that comment, my fingers paused. Urology clinic? If this commenter was telling the truth, Ethan probably knew his infertility issues all along. Yet he stubbornly pressed forward with his underhanded schemes. The public outrage quickly snowballed, catapulting the scandal to the top of New York's trending list overnight. By morning, Horizon Inc. stock had plummeted drastically. Watching the cash from my high-value stock sale safely sitting in my account, I couldn't help but smirk. This is precisely why I didn't contact Lucas before my divorce. Had Lucas discovered his child sooner, he would have undoubtedly caused a commotion right away. In that case, divorcing Ethan would have only provided me with devalued shares. Selling the shares at peak prices first, then tipping Lucas off to cause chaos, was the optimal strategy. The scandal lingered atop the local news rankings for a full day and night before finally losing steam. It was around this time that Emmy came to me with the juiciest updates. You know what, Liv? Turns out the baby really isn't Ethan's. Yesterday's drama had everyone flocking to the maternity center to gawk. Ethan's probably lost his mind by now, insisting on a paternity test for the baby no matter what. I heard the secretary nearly jumped off the maternity center building to avoid the test. When the results came out, the look on Ethan's family's faces priceless. As Emmy spoke, she pulled out her phone and opened a group chat titled NYC Gossip Central. Dozens of videos filled the chat. One 20-minute clip showed Sophia, disheveled and wearing hospital scrubs, kneeling and clutching Ethan's pant leg, begging him not to proceed with the paternity test. In front of everyone, Ethan kicked her away without hesitation. He even stomped on her stomach a few times. In the video, Ethan's eyes burned crimson as he unleashed a stream of vulgar insults at Sophia. William and Grace stood silently nearby, wiping their tears. About 5 minutes later, Sophia suddenly snapped and dashed towards the window. She raised her foot, ready to leap from the 8th floor. Only after everyone frantically intervened did she fail to carry out her desperate attempt. Yet she kept shouting furiously, "You useless piece of trash, no wonder you couldn't get Olivia pregnant in 5 years. You've got the nerve to blame me for cheating on you. Why not admit you've been a failure all along, you impotent fool? Which woman could ever have your child? Ethan, you'll be childless for the rest of your miserable life." Emmy, watching all this, burst into uncontrollable laughter. She leaned closer to me and said, "There's another video below this time. It's Ethan receiving the test results." In the video, Ethan held the test report in his hands, his face darkened with rage. Moments later, he tore the report into pieces and punched the hospital's pillar in fury. His hand instantly began to bleed. Meanwhile, Sophia, slumped on the floor, looked like a worn-out woman in her 40s or 50s. Her vacant eyes stared into nothingness, her skin sallow, her face sagging beyond recognition despite being in her early 20s. She gazed lifelessly out the window, completely indifferent to the chaos around her, the crowd gawking, the reporters clamoring for interviews. Emmy sneered mockingly. "This is it, Ethan gets cheated on, loses his reputation. A double dose of disgrace, and Sophia's dream of marrying into wealth crumbles. Now everyone condemns her." Seeing all this, I couldn't help but feel a rush of glee myself. In just half a year, I'd gone from being discarded by the Ethan family to holding most of their wealth in my hands. And I'd freed myself from a husband incapable of having children. Thinking about it, I wrapped my arm around Emmy and said, "Let's go, sis. I'm taking you on a vacation to Northern Europe to celebrate." After all, the money in my account now is more than I could spend in several lifetimes. When Emmy and I returned from our overseas trip, spring had already arrived in New York for the 2nd year. Those carefree days exploring Northern Europe had finally helped me unwind after the months of tension I'd endured. Looking back now, the time I spent facing off against the Ethan family and Sophia alone was harrowing. One misstep could have trapped me in a hopeless quagmire. Thankfully, things worked out in the end. However, during the 5 months we were away, a lot had happened in New York. Ethan had been fired from his position at the corporate headquarters for mishandling personal matters after his affair came to light. He was blacklisted across the industry. With his career destroyed, Ethan directed all his rage at Sophia. Neighbors claimed she was often seen covered in bruises while out grocery shopping. At night, the sounds of Ethan abusing Sophia could be heard through the walls. During my travels, I received a call from Grace. Her voice was choked with sobs as she begged me to help them financially. She explained that Ethan, unable to cope with the humiliation, had been living recklessly and was recently diagnosed with a severe illness. Meanwhile, Sophia had been committed to a psychiatric hospital due to her mental instability. Both required expensive treatments, yet the Ethan family was utterly bankrupt and had no means to pay the costs. Hearing Grace's tearful plea, I didn't offer much of a reply. I merely said a few perfunctory words before hanging up. To be honest, I felt no sympathy. Their downfall was their own doing. Instead, I found their plight amusing. Ethan and Sophia's fate was exactly what they deserved. Whatever hardships they faced from now on had nothing to do with me. I focused solely on myself in the days that followed. I began working on a new collection for the upcoming quarter, a single women's ring inspired by the theme of constellations. During my marriage, most of my designs had centered around wedding bands. But now, post-divorce, my target market had shifted. The change in my own status gave me fresh ideas and perspectives. I wanted to inspire other women whose marriages or relationships had fallen apart to boldly embrace singlehood. But my theme proposal didn't pass easily. During the meeting, someone asked, "A single women's ring is a great concept, but why focus on constellations?" Because stars are always paired with the moon. It doesn't seem to convey the core idea of female independence and self-sufficiency. For a moment, I almost couldn't answer. Then, suddenly, I remembered the dazzling night sky I'd seen in Northern Europe. Actually, most stars are fixed stars, capable of emitting their own light as independent entities. They don't exist merely to accompany the moon. Just like you and me, we're independent individuals. We don't need to depend on anyone or any relationship to define our existence. End of the first story. Subscribe to my channel if you like my stories. Don't miss the second exciting story. Story 2. Ethan hooked up with a wealthy woman and demanded a clean break, pushing me to divorce him. I replied, "No way, you need to pay more." The daughter of the richest man in town set her sights on Ethan, the husband I had chased for 5 years and finally married. She said, "As long as you sign the papers, all the assets will go to you, and he'll leave with nothing." I refused. Ethan yelled at me. "Don't push your luck," I countered. "Add another $2 million to the deal." The princess raised her eyebrow, nodded dismissively, and handed me a check. I quickly signed the divorce papers, grabbed the check, and slipped away. What they didn't know was that Ethan had bone cancer and was dying. "You can make any other requests you want," the princess, Summer, said condescendingly, looking down at me. Earlier, she had explained, "If you sign this paper and agree to divorce Ethan, all the assets will belong to you, and Ethan will leave with nothing." I didn't agree right away. After Summer finished speaking, I kept silent, not giving her an answer. Ethan grew anxious. He stood up, pointed at me, and shouted, "Don't push your luck," ignoring him. I focused on Summer and smiled at her. "I'll sign, but you need to add another $2 million to sweeten the deal." Summer froze for a second, clearly not expecting such a demand. Without hesitation, however, she nodded and handed me a check. Once I confirmed the amount, I swiftly signed my name on the divorce agreement and left with the check in hand. I hadn't even exited the cafe when Summer called out to me. She urged me to finalize the divorce. Since the papers are signed, there's no point in dragging out the final step. How about setting a date to get the divorce certificate? I knew she feared I might change my mind, but what she didn't understand was that I worried far more about Ethan regretting the deal. I stopped in my tracks, turned to her, and said, "Let's do it today. It's a weekday anyway." Ethan looked at me in confusion, clearly surprised by my unusual behavior. If this had been the me from before, I would have begged him to stay. But now that he had climbed the social ladder, he couldn't wait to kick me aside. Without much thought, he followed me to the local courthouse. After we received the divorce certificate, I kept my mask on the entire time to hide my smile, afraid Ethan might notice. Covering my face, I pretended to wipe my eyes, but Ethan assumed I was crying. Disgusted, he distanced himself from me and sneered, "How pathetic, I've wanted to dump you for ages. Go cry somewhere else." I nodded quietly, saying nothing. As Ethan noticed me glance at him, he started showing off. "What are you looking at? This suit I'm wearing is something you couldn't afford in your lifetime. Don't think that streaming has made you rich. This was custom made for me in Paris by Summer herself." I took a closer look. It was indeed a fine suit. Clothes make the man, as they say. Even wolves and tigers can look presentable when dressed up. And Ethan, with his handsome features and great physique, really did resemble a young heir from a wealthy family in that outfit. But his eyes betrayed him. They gleamed with scheming ambition. As I stared at him, I remembered how he used to take out loans online to buy luxury goods. Back then, he fooled me, and now he's fooled Summer. I heard Summer's ex-boyfriend was also a scumbag. Seems like she's a magnet for jerks. Summer waited outside, eyeing the two of us closely, as if afraid I might pull something. When we approached her, she warned me, "You two are divorced now. Don't you dare cling to him again, or you'll regret it." I nodded eagerly. "Of course I won't regret anything, but you better not go back on your word either." As I said this, I glanced at Ethan's legs. Ethan was good-looking in every way except for his limp. His legs often hurt, which was a source of insecurity for him. Whenever someone stared at his legs, he'd fly into a rage. Summer glanced at his legs with a trace of disgust. Ethan immediately turned to me and shouted angrily, "What's your game? Stop trying to stir up trouble between me and Summer." With that, he grabbed Summer and got into a car. The driver then whisked them away. As their sports car roared off, I thought about the early days when Ethan and I first met. To Ethan was my white moonlight, someone I had chased for 5 long years. Our story was well known to many, as we were both somewhat famous live streamers. We met through gaming. The first time I saw him on video, I fell for him instantly. Not only was he incredibly handsome, but he had an air of mystery about him. I felt there were secrets hidden within him that unknowingly drew me in. I pursued him for 5 years before he finally agreed to be with me. During those 5 years, I spent a fortune on him. Whenever he traveled or ate out, all his expenses were covered by me. Looking back, I can't believe how foolish I was. After we got together, I learned that Ethan had racked up substantial debt from his extravagant spending. I confronted him, "If you don't have a stable income, why take out loans to buy so many luxury items?" He blamed me, saying I only loved his appearance and didn't care about the real him. Having chased him for 5 years, I couldn't just walk away over this. So I helped him pay off his debts by starting a food live stream. I did the eating while he didn't touch a bite. Ethan claimed eating that kind of food was bad for his health. And he wasn't wrong. I developed numerous health issues over time. But thanks to those streams, we managed to clear all his debts. When I used to live stream, I'd sit at the front eating, while Ethan sat in the back, acting as a sort of mascot. Over time, the two of us gradually gained a large following. As our fan base grew, so did the number of people who adored him. Many started criticizing me, saying I wasn't good enough for him, calling me ugly and overweight. Eventually, even the daughter of the richest man in our city set her sights on him. To be honest, before today, I had considered divorcing him. But as his money-making tool, he refused to let me go. He even threatened me. "If you leave, I'll kill your entire family." Ethan didn't actually know where my family was. I had told him before that I'd fallen out with my family to be with him. But Ethan claimed he had ways to find them. After all, as my spouse, he could simply file a report with the police and quickly locate my parents. It was ironic. Now that someone was willing to take this scumbag off my hands, not only could I rid myself of this garbage, but I'd also get money in the process. Why wouldn't I agree? What no one knew was that, just before Summer called me to sign the divorce papers, I had received Ethan's medical report diagnosing him with bone cancer. By noon, they had summoned me to a cafe, forcing me to sign the divorce agreement. Ethan had once told me that both his parents had passed away and that he was raised by his grandparents. I used to wonder how his parents could have died so young. Now, I understood cancers like this often have genetic origins. I was suddenly grateful that we didn't have children. If he had cared even a little about his health, he would have discovered the bone cancer himself without me having to say a word. Besides, he physically abused me often enough. I didn't curse him, so at least I wasn't actively wishing for his death. I simply chose not to tell him about his condition. After getting my settlement money, I went on a spree at high-end department stores, hauling back bags upon bags of luxury items. When I returned home that night, I found two unwelcome guests sitting on my couch: Sis, Jenny, and her husband. Jenny, looking furious, smashed the cup in her hand onto the floor and shouted at me, "Why did you fire the housekeeper? We haven't even had dinner yet. If you fired the housekeeper, who's going to cook for us?" What a question. I found it amusing and gave her a pointed look. How is it you two haven't starved yet? If you have the means, go hire your own housekeeper. Before I married Ethan, Jenny had already been living in our home every day. She got married before I did, and her husband was a wannabe rebel who spent his days riding his motorcycle around town with no stable job. When she got pregnant, she outright moved in with us. I ended up taking care of her meals every day. Later, as I got busy with live streaming, I hired a housekeeper using my own money, of course. Seeing my firm stance, Jenny began to threaten me. "Hire the housekeeper back immediately, or I'll tell my brother to come beat you to death." I looked at her in disbelief and asked, "We're both women. I've treated you well all this time. How can you so casually suggest that your brother should abuse me?" Jenny sneered and said smugly, "So what? You deserve it. Having spent so much time and effort on such an ungrateful person, I deeply regretted ever being kind to her." Without further argument, I called the police. When the officers arrived, I told them there were two strangers in my home who refused to leave. Jenny wailed to the officers, "She's my sister-in-law, she's just trying to kick me out while my brother isn't home." I showed the officers my finalized divorce certificate. After confirming it, they escorted the two of them out. The next morning, Jenny was back. She stood outside, yelling, "This is my brother's house. If anyone should leave, it's you, not me. Get out of my brother's house, you shameless woman. If you don't come out, I'll smash your door to pieces." I opened the door and told her, "If you don't leave now, it won't just be the police escorting you out next time." Jenny, emboldened by self-righteousness, retorted, "Even if you're divorced, you should leave with nothing. This house was bought with my brother's live stream earnings." I pulled out the agreement I had signed with Summer. The document clearly bore both my name and Ethan's, and in black and white, it stated that Ethan willingly relinquished all assets, including properties and money, to me. Despite this, Jenny stubbornly refused to budge from the doorway. Just as I was about to call the police again, a thought suddenly struck me. I leaned in and whispered, "Do you know who your brother's current girlfriend is? Your brother is dating none other than the daughter of the wealthiest man in town. Their home is far more luxurious than this one. She lives in the city's most expensive neighborhood, with more space and plenty of staff. They even travel by private jet. There are housekeepers and chauffeurs galore." Jenny and her husband were visibly excited yet skeptical. "Is that true? Don't try to trick me," I replied. "If you don't believe me, why don't you ask your brother yourself?" Jenny immediately called Ethan, barely waiting for him to pick up before asking eagerly, "Brother, is it true? Did you really find yourself a rich heiress?" Ethan confirmed it without hesitation. Jenny, smug, switched to speakerphone and continued, "Can I come stay with you? Can I move into your new girlfriend's place?" Without missing a beat, Ethan boasted, as if he were the new master of the heiress's home, "Why not? Of course. This house is under my control. Hurry over, I'll get a taxi for you. There are plenty of houses here." I never expected someone could justify being a freeloader so confidently. Jenny glanced at me disdainfully after hearing this, then hurried away with Ethan. After sending off these two nuisances, I rushed to the airport. It was my first time returning to my parents' house after 2 years, yet everything still felt so familiar. 2 years ago, my parents cut ties with me because I insisted on marrying Ethan, a poor man with an unclear background. This time, I didn't inform them in advance and came unannounced, secretly worried they might still refuse to forgive me. Before I even reached the door, Dad called and asked me, "Lil, did you get divorced? Your mom and I are heading to your place to pick you up. We'll be downstairs soon." Tears streamed down my face as I replied, "Dad, I'm home. I came back to see you guys. What should we do? We missed each other." Mom took the phone and comforted me. "Sweetheart, wait for us at home. We'll take the next flight back." Once I was back in the familiar house, the housekeeper brought me my favorite desserts. Ethan had dumped me for the daughter of a second-tier city tycoon. But little did he know, his ex-wife was actually a bona fide heiress from the elite circles of New York. To celebrate my divorce, my parents took me on a vacation. At the seaside, we unexpectedly ran into Ethan and Summer. As Mom left to retrieve her forgotten phone from the hotel room, I waited with Dad in the lobby. Ethan spotted us and deliberately came over to mock me, saying, "Wow, after divorcing me, you really lowered your standards, huh? Found yourself a sugar daddy." Without hesitation, Dad threw a punch, sending Ethan tumbling to the ground. Clutching his mouth, Ethan shrieked. Then, opening his hand, he discovered a tooth lying in his palm. Dad used to be a professional boxer. Knocking out a tooth was merely a warm-up for him. Sitting on the floor, Ethan pointed at Dad and mumbled angrily, "How dare you hit me? Do you even know who my girlfriend is?" Hearing Ethan's cries, Summer rushed over to check his injuries and asked Dad indignantly, "Do you even know who I am? These two clowns, do they even know who they are themselves? Why are they so obsessed with asking others?" Summer demanded Dad apologize to Ethan. At that moment, the hotel manager hurried over. Before Summer could speak, the manager bypassed her entirely, rushing straight to Dad to bow and apologize profusely. "I'm so sorry, Mr. George. Is there an issue? Should we escort these two out?" Summer couldn't stand being ignored. She furiously grabbed the manager and snapped, "Listen here, my uncle is friends with the owner of this hotel. You better make them apologize to my boyfriend, or you'll be out of a job." The manager straightened up, his expression neutral, and replied, "Miss, this hotel is owned by Mr. George himself." Summer screamed in disbelief. "That's nonsense, I don't believe you." She immediately called her uncle for backup, saying, "Uncle, come quickly, there's a tacky rich guy bullying my boyfriend and me. You need to kick them out." A few minutes later, Summer's uncle arrived. Choosing the same approach as the manager, he walked directly to Dad, bowed deeply, and apologized. "Mr. George, this is my niece. She has a bad temper and has been spoiled by the family. I hope you won't hold it against her." Dad stood there, calm and imposing, without saying a word. Seeing Dad's silence, Summer's uncle bent even lower and continued apologizing. "I'm truly sorry, Mr. George. Our recent project depends on your approval. Please be magnanimous and decide how to handle these two. We'll follow your lead." Summer seemed stunned by the unfolding scene, standing frozen and speechless. Perhaps she didn't realize there's always someone more powerful. After a long while, nobody paid attention to Ethan. He struggled to his feet and, still unable to grasp the situation, shouted at me, "Don't think you're so great just because you found a rich old guy. He's so much older than you, you'll regret it." Before I could respond, Dad moved forward to hit him again, but I quickly stopped him. With a wave of Dad's hand, the hotel staff promptly carried Ethan out and dumped him outside. Standing outside the hotel, Ethan shouted Summer's name, demanding she stand up for him. Summer, humiliated and furious, covered her face and ran into the elevator. Back home, I focused on arranging a rental property. While shopping at the mall, I ran into Ethan's sister and Summer. Summer walked ahead with an air of arrogance, while Jenny followed behind, clutching her pregnant belly and carrying several luxury shopping bags, looking like a servant. Summer occasionally glanced back at her with a critical eye. Watching this scene, I thought to myself, so, it looks like she didn't get to enjoy private jets and mansions after all. Jenny's life didn't seem to be going well. As Summer passed me, she shot me a glare before walking away. Jenny sized me up and down, her gaze lingering on my glittering outfit and the luxury handbag in my hand, one she could never afford in her lifetime. She stared at me hatefully for a long time before Summer called her away. A fellow streamer told me, "Jenny is living in the maid's quarters at Summer's house. She cleans every day, but doesn't even get paid." I asked, "What about her husband, Ethan? Didn't he make a fuss? He's not exactly the sharpest tool in the shed." My friend clicked her tongue twice and continued, "Ethan caused a scene at Summer's house twice, but her bodyguards gave him a good beating and threw him out." I couldn't help but chuckle, imagining it. Evil truly does get its match. Ethan had left his marriage with nothing, no savings, and now he and Jenny were entirely dependent on Summer. Whenever Jenny tried to lash out at Summer for her treatment, her brother would warn her to keep her tail between her legs. Ethan even called me once to borrow money, but I blocked both siblings without hesitation. No wonder they've sunk so low begging me for money, of all people. Turns out, latching onto a wealthy woman isn't as easy as it seems. Isn't that Jenny? I was accompanying my streamer friend for a hospital checkup when we bumped into Jenny. She was being wheeled out of an ambulance, blood visible beneath her. Based on the timing, it wasn't due yet could she be having a premature delivery. It was far too early. A few days later, my friends shared the gossip. It was all because of cleaning. Jenny wasn't exactly skilled at housework when she lived with me. She'd been pampered and didn't lift a finger. Now pregnant, she was even lazier. But Summer wasn't about to indulge her. The day we saw her, Jenny had spilled oil on the floor and didn't clean it up properly. Summer slipped and fell because of it. Furious, Summer ordered Jenny to fall in the exact same spot as punishment, or else the siblings would be kicked out of the house. Jenny didn't dare resist. She followed orders and intentionally fell down the stairs. That's how she ended up in the hospital. Luckily, she and the baby were fine. Her tough skin must have helped. After 2 days in the hospital, Summer stopped paying for her medical bills, forcing Jenny to scurry back to serve Summer. Listening to the gossip about the siblings, I felt only one thing. These people were completely irrelevant to my life now. I had once damaged my health doing mukbangs to help Ethan pay off his debts. Now that my body had mostly recovered and I had some savings, I shifted gears to capitalize on my accumulated followers through livestream sales. For the sake of my health, I switched to the fitness industry. 6 months later, I had successfully crossed the 1 million follower mark, earning over $10 million. I established my own company, built a strong team from scratch, and fully immersed myself in my career. During a dinner with fellow streamers, someone asked me, "Lil, do you still have any contact with Ethan's family?" I shook my head. The person, aware of Ethan's infidelity, smirked and told me, "You wouldn't believe it, Summer kicked Ethan's entire family out of her house." At first, Ethan seemed pretty well behaved. We all thought he'd finally settled down, holding on tight to his wealthy wife and wanting a fresh start. I chuckled quietly to myself. A leopard never changes its spots. With a personality like his, how could he possibly turn over a new leaf? Sure enough, Ethan began feeling suffocated living under Summer's roof. With little money in hand, he returned to his old ways, flirting with wealthy women online through gaming platforms. He had always maintained some popularity with female fans from his streaming days, and a few of them still hadn't given up on him. When Summer discovered his affair, she had her bodyguards give him a brutal beating and kicked both him and Jenny out of the house that very night. It was pouring rain that evening. Ethan tried to play the pity card, kneeling at Summer's door to evoke her sympathy. But Summer didn't care about him at all. After kneeling all night in the rain, Ethan collapsed from exhaustion. Summer, worried he might die at her doorstep and bring bad luck, had him sent to the hospital. Doctors diagnosed him with bone cancer already in its late stages and untreatable. Summer didn't ask further questions. She simply abandoned him at the hospital and left. I said to my friend, "I already know about this." Because after leaving the hospital, Summer came straight to me. She demanded money, saying, "Did you already know Ethan was sick? Is that why you divorced him so decisively?" I neither confirmed nor denied it, only smiling in response. Summer then said, "I regret it. Give me back the money. I don't want him anymore. I'll give him back to you. You chased him for 5 years, didn't you? You loved him so much, take him back." I took out the agreement she'd forced me to sign, saying, "Black and white, this is legally binding. If you want your money back, sue me. If the court orders me to return it, I'll comply fully." Summer stared at me for a long moment before saying, "I underestimated you. You're not a simple woman." I accepted her compliment and replied, "Right back at you." After that incident, I couldn't shake a lingering unease, worried that Ethan's family might come looking for me. Originally, Dad and Mom wanted me to move back in with them. Mom, worried, urged me over the phone, "Didn't you say he used to hit you? Now that he's been kicked out by Summer's family and has nowhere to turn, I'm afraid he might harm you." "Sweetheart, come home. We don't need your income," Dad chimed in. "Listen to your mother and come back. Even if my daughter lies around doing nothing her whole life, I can still take care of you." But the e-commerce industry in this city was booming, and my businesses were all established here. Leaving wasn't an option, at least not in the short term. Most importantly, I couldn't let go of the career I'd worked so hard to build. Starting over in a new city wasn't something I wanted to face. Mom, Dad, don't worry. I'll protect myself. I found something I'm passionate about, and in the future, I'll take care of you both. Sure enough, a few days later, the real estate agent told me that the buyers of my old house said Ethan and Jenny had shown up at the property. When they found out I'd sold the house, they pressured the new owners to tell them where I was. The buyers didn't know, so Ethan and Jenny loitered until the homeowners had no choice but to call the police to get rid of them. The next day at work, they ambushed me outside the company building. Jenny, with a soft smile and a pitiful tone, addressed me, sis-in-law. Cradling a baby in her arms, she held the child out to me. Sis-in-law, this is your niece. It's her first time meeting you since she was born. Come, hold her. Meeting for the first time, aren't you supposed to give her a big red envelope? I took 2 steps back, frowning as I asked, do I know you? This is my first time seeing someone try to claim family ties out of the blue. You two sure have thick skin. A crowd of onlookers had begun to form around the scene. Jenny hadn't expected my icy response, and my blunt words made her face flush with embarrassment as she lowered her head awkwardly. Then I saw her eyes dart around, clearly scheming something new. Ethan, noticing my lack of sympathy for his sister, pulled her behind him and tried to step closer to me. Security quickly intervened to block him. Rubbing his hands together, Ethan apologized. Honey, I was wrong. I shouldn't have divorced you. I was misled back then. It's all Summer's fault. If it weren't for her, I never would have left you. Honey, you treated me so well, and I couldn't bear to let you go either. I realize my mistake now. Please forgive me. I know you will. You've forgiven me so many times before. I know you've stayed single because you've been waiting for me. Well, now I'm back. Let's go get remarried right now. I looked at him with curiosity. This was the first time I'd seen him grovel like this. Seeing me smirk, Ethan thought I was about to forgive him and eagerly tried to move closer. You two are the most shameless people I've ever met, I said coldly. Ethan, you disgust me, and Jenny, you're a parasite. Neither of you deserves to be alive. Every extra day you live is a gift from above. Hearing my words, Jenny started shouting, scolding me. Look at you, you're not getting any younger, and you've been single all this time since divorcing my brother. Isn't it because no one else wants you? If you forgive my brother now, he might reluctantly take you back. Otherwise, we'll leave and you'll regret it. Please just leave already, I said. If you don't, I'll call security again. I signaled the guards to remove them, and as they pushed Ethan back, he suddenly dropped his act, revealing his true colors. He glared at me and shouted, "Who do you think you're fooling? Don't think I don't know what kind of person you are. What's the matter? Did the rich guy you latched onto dump you?" Embarrassed by the scene, I asked, "What do you want? Just say it." Realizing reconciliation was impossible, Ethan shrugged dramatically and demanded, "Give me the house and the 2 million Summer gave you, and I promise I won't bother you again." I snorted in his face. "You must be dreaming. Be realistic. I won't give you a penny." Jenny chimed in, "That money was originally my brother's. Summer only gave it to you because of him. Now that they've broken up, you should return it." At that point, I realized it was pointless to reason with these 2 leeches. I motioned for security to kick them out. The guards gave Ethan a shove, and he dramatically collapsed to the ground, clutching his leg as if in pain. Out of basic decency, I called an ambulance for him. When my parents heard about the incident, they worried the 2 might continue harassing me. Dad hired bodyguards to patrol around my office 24/7. Mom, still uneasy, flew in and insisted I stay with them for a while. Looking back, it was sheer luck that I escaped what happened next. During that time, Ethan killed Summer. He somehow found out my home address and spent days staking out the area, sneaking into the neighborhood by hiding in someone else's car trunk. After breaking the electronic lock on my apartment, he forced his way in. Fortunately, I was staying with my parents at the time. He ransacked the place, stealing some cash and jewelry, and left a knife stabbed into my desk. Surveillance footage showed he waited for me for most of the night before finally leaving in the early hours. Ethan couldn't find me, so he went to Summer. Since they hadn't been together for long, Ethan's violent and abusive tendencies hadn't fully surfaced yet. During the time he stayed at Summer's place, He lived like a coward, which made Summer believe he was nothing more than a timid man. She didn't see him as a threat and never even removed his fingerprint access from her apartment. That day, Ethan disguised himself as a delivery driver and managed to sneak into Summer's apartment. Once inside, he demanded money from her. "If it weren't for you, I wouldn't have divorced Lily. It's all your fault for persuading me to leave her. And now, when you see I'm sick, you just abandon me like trash. Give me $2 million. I want compensation for the emotional damage." Summer didn't take him seriously and said many harsh things to provoke him. "Do you really think you're worth $2 million? Even if you got the money, do you think you'd live long enough to spend it? Don't you know you have bone cancer? You're just a dying man trying to threaten me. Ridiculous. Let me tell you something, you were born to be poor. Getting cancer is your karma. You've done too many evil things, and now you're just paying for it." The two argued for a long time. When Ethan realized he couldn't get any money from her, he flew into a rage and slammed Summer onto the ground. Her head hit the marble floor, and she died instantly. The next day, the police arrested Ethan in his hometown. After I returned, Jenny showed up at my house, clutching her baby and acting hysterical, begging me to help get her brother out of jail. I ignored her, and she stormed off in a frenzy. Later, I saw her on the street once. She was talking to herself while rummaging through a trash bin for food, still holding her child. After staring for a few seconds, I told the driver to close the car window and head to the airport. Thanks to Dad's connections, I had established a partnership with an international company. This time, I was heading to England to discuss a new project. By chance, I encountered faces from the past. Everything that had happened seemed like a distant dream. Thankfully, I had long escaped from that nightmare and now embraced a real life filled with hope and possibilities.